If I had to pick a favorite quarter of the year, it would be the fourth quarter, which is why this video is part of our larger Quarter 4 Comeback series, where we're preparing to launch into 2026 organized, confident, and fully upgraded. Today I'm going to be walking you through 26 powerful questions to ask yourself in preparation for entering the new year. Before we get into it and I start drifting into my therapist voice, I thought it might be nice to meet you. Hi, my name is Dr. Jamie. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist who's focused on performance optimization for the last 12 years. Let's get into these questions and excuse my tone. All right, let's start with the first one. What is your favorite time of day and why? This question is going to help us get at what energizes us, what brings us joy. It's going to give us a little bit more insight and explanation as to what we've been enjoying over the last 9 months. Next, what are the moments that brought you the most joy this year? This is starting to get into our values analysis, and part of values are things that we're drawn to. Values are sometimes called the cognitive representations of our desired end state, which is really fancy language of just saying like the things that bring us joy, the things that we like, the things that we're drawn to and strive toward. This question is starting to get to that, and it's related to the third question, which is what am I the most proud of? This is going to help you understand your own self-image, how you see yourself, and it's also telling us a little bit about what you think is important and also what you think is good. And I don't mean good in the moral sense of right and wrong, but in the really hyper-individual, personalized way that we define our values, what's important and meaningful for us. An example of how I answer this question, I haven't answered it for 2025 yet, but my proudest moment of my life was when I was a semi-finalist in the Intel Science Search. It's a high school science competition, and the fact that I placed as a semi-finalist doing behavioral science and competing against physical scientists as well was the proudest moment of my life. And since then, I've received a PhD, gotten many other awards and accolades, but for some reason, at 17, that was the proudest moment of my life. It says a little bit about me, what I think is important, and really how I define myself and my idealized state. So I really like that question. Moving from yourself to other people, the next question is, who did I admire the most? This will give you some indication of things that you find valuable and important in other people. Potentially it highlights some character traits that might be different than what you're embodying and may even present a type of roadmap to the person that you want to become. The next one is a bit of a toughie. Where am I saying yes when I really mean no? This question starts to get at whether or not you're advocating for yourself, if you are behaving in a way that's consistent with your values. So are you doing things that show others or prove to yourself that you are actually focusing on what you value, what matters, and what you find to be important? And it's related to the next question, which is, what commitments am I making out of obligation rather than alignment? This question is also getting at that inconsistency between what you think actually matters and what you're doing, but it goes a little deeper because it gives you some insight as to why you're doing those things. And this is aligned with a kind of therapy that I do in clinical care when I have clients as a clinical psychologist. Sometimes people are doing a specific behavior and they're like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Well, the fact that you're continuing this behavior over and over generally means that it serves a purpose for you. Sometimes that purpose is consistent with your values and sometimes it isn't. And so it's creating this kind of psychological stress. One example could be if you're working at a job that you don't like or you don't find fulfilling or is inconsistent with like your worldview or something like that. Well, why do we continue to go to this job? Why do we continue to work? Well, many of us value money or what money gives you, the ability to support your family, the ability to meet your basic fundamental needs like food, shelter, and clothing. So sometimes we're acting in a way out of obligation rather than alignment. And this question helps to get at that. These next two questions speak to the behavioral scientist in me. If someone followed me around for a week, what would they say is the most important thing to me? This is getting to that disconnect between what we think or what we believe and then how we act and what we do. Taking the perspective of an outside observer, they might say, this person really values coffee because no matter where we are, she will find a coffee shop and she will spend her money there, right? So the fact that you are engaging in certain behaviors over and over and an external party can identify some of those patterns, it helps you understand, how am I behaving day to day? How am I showing up in the world? What are my behaviors saying about the person that I am? This next one is similar, but it's breaking it down to how we allocate our resources. The question is, if someone looked at our calendar and our bank account, what would they say mattered the most to us? Looking at what you put in your calendar is looking at what you find important enough to have a dedicated block of time to achieve. So I might find that keeping my job is important to me because in my calendar I have go to staff meeting X, Y, and Z. My bank account might say this is a person that really cares about fashion because they spend $500 a month buying new clothes. Now, this gives you a point of examination because if I'm a person that actually just wears the same navy blue top video after video after video, should I really be spending $500 on new clothes when I wear the same 4 tops every time I'm in front of the camera? What roles in my life have required the most of me this year? This question helps to get at what season of life you're in. Your life might look very different if you have 3 kids under 4 years old compared to someone that has one 15-year-old. The season of life could help you better understand what you've done over the last year and what you can reasonably expect of yourself in the next year. There was a time when I was finishing my dissertation, planning a wedding, and taking care of a newborn. That was not the right time to start learning Japanese. Having a better understanding of what is being asked of you in your different roles and responsibilities helps you to understand how to harmonize your life, because balance is a myth. It's unlikely that you'll ever have a time where you're spending the exact same amount of time and energy at work, at home, with your spouse, with your kid, with your hobbies, because our lives are so diverse and our life domains are so different. There's rarely going to be a time where you're being completely equal in how you're attacking all of the different parts of your life. So rather than trying to find balance, you're trying to understand the harmony and the specific mix that's going to bring you the most happiness or the most fulfillment over the next year. Which relationships need more intentional investment? Most of us have more than one interpersonal relationship in our lives, and sometimes we just put those things in autopilot. Now, depending on the season of life that you're in, it might be helpful to explore whether or not you want to put in any kind of focused effort on really strengthening any of your individual relationships. This is the tough one. Which area of my life feels like it might collapse if I don't address it soon? This question is getting at the area of your life that has the most urgent need for attention. And it could help to narrow down your specific goals that you want to tackle in the coming year. As much as I wish this wasn't true, we don't have an infinite amount of time, nor do we have an infinite amount of energy or resources. So when we look at what we can do over the next 90 days or even over the next 365 days thinking about next year, it's important that we are investing our time and energy in high impact areas. But if there is an area of your life that you feel like will really implode, if you do not give it the necessary time and attention, this might be something that needs to be prioritized as a focal point or as a goal for the coming year. All right, let's move to the other extreme. Where am I truly shining? Looking at where you've excelled over the past year has so many benefits, starting with deepening your awareness of your own strengths and also leading to increased motivation moving forward. Looking back and examining your past successes can give you insight on how to succeed in areas where you might be struggling. It also just gives you a little hit of dopamine when you're halfway through these powerful questions. Where do I feel the most energized, and where do I feel the most depleted? This will help give you insight on your own energy profile, and sometimes it's helpful for me as I'm planning out my ideal week so that I know where to place things on the calendar, understanding that accomplishing those specific tasks might have an energy impact on the next task. This information also helps me plan out my ideal week because I know where to place specific tasks or specific interactions with people by understanding how that task is going to impact my energy for the rest of the day or for the time directly following that action. Going into the organization territory, the next question is, how do I decide what needs to get done? This is going to help you examine if you have a good prioritization system, if you have a decent task management system, and it might help illustrate why you're dealing with feelings such as overwhelmed or feeling like you've never quite accomplished everything that you'd like to do. What is the most common task that tends to slip through the cracks? This is going to identify holes in your task management system or holes in your organizational system. It might also give you some insights on things that you're purposefully avoiding. And once we know what we're avoiding, we can do a deep dive to understand what is sustaining that avoidance or sustaining that procrastination. How do I currently capture tasks, ideas, and notes? This is examining your organization system as a whole because we get so many inputs these days. This question helps to get at whether or not you have some sort of system of capturing all these different inputs. How am I spending my time outside of work? There have been times when I've asked myself this question and I have not liked the answer. Sometimes it's been 4 hours of Netflix. And I ask myself, where on my values list or values assessment is Netflix? Also, what is the value or utility of those 4 hours? What is the opportunity cost? Like, what is it that I'm not doing because I'm watching Netflix for 4 hours? This question helps you examine some of those things. It also examines what you gravitate toward when you have full autonomy over your time. So many of us don't have complete control over what we do while we're at work, but many of us have much greater latitude in how we spend our time outside of work. What is the most cluttered physical space in my life right now? This question helps you examine your physical organization system, and it also challenges you to think through some things that might not be right in your face all the time. In my life, this question helps me get down deep because my house tends to be pretty tidy on a regular basis, but there are hidden spots where things tend to collect or we tend to ignore over long periods of time. So every year I want to ask myself, where am I hiding things around the house? And is there some way to address this systematically so that I am not slowly accumulating an entire collection of rollerblades under my staircase? The next one is one I've struggled with for years, which is, what digital clutter is causing me the most stress? For me, it tends to be my pictures. The more that I have, the harder it is for me to locate the exact picture that I want to reference or that I want to display. And also having an abundance of them makes each individual photo less valuable. So this question is trying to get you to think critically about how you store and organize your digital space. How would my life feel different if I had one trusted system I could fully rely on? This question is helping you understand if you have a holistic life organization system and whether or not you need one. If you think to yourself, I don't necessarily have one, and having one won't vastly change the life that I'm living, that's an indicator of satisfaction with the status quo. On the other hand, if you think it'd be really helpful for you to have some sort of trusted system so that you can understand what it is that you should be doing and you could know that nothing is falling through the cracks, then it might be an indication that putting time and investment into a personal organization system might be beneficial. Generally, people that feel overwhelmed tend to lack a trusted system for determining what they need to be doing when and ensuring that nothing falls through the cracks. Not having this kind of system also leads to a chronic open loop where people are thinking, what should I be doing right now? What am I forgetting right now? When you have a trusted system and you can outsource that cognitive load, those feelings tend to decrease. How did I measure progress this year? Famously, what isn't measured can't be improved, and many people walk through their lives never measuring things that they claim to be important in their lives. Maybe it's because of my profession, but I highly value tracking things that are important to you. In fact, I've tracked my entire life for the last 6 months and I made a whole video about it. I will leave it linked up above. But having a tracking system helps you understand if you're going in the right direction. It helps you understand whether or not you've met your specific goal. Tracking can take very different forms and can occur at very different intervals. So it's a matter of identifying what it is that's important to you, what are your specific end states, and then what is the most realistic and sustainable way to track your progress toward that end state. And also, how do you know when to celebrate if you don't know that you've met your mark? What's my process for getting back on track when I fall behind? Life has stumbling blocks and setbacks, and that's just part of the process. When we acknowledge that that's part of the process, but have a system to get back on track, we're more likely to keep moving forward and more likely to meet our goal. This question asks you to examine whether or not you have a specific process that you use to get back on track when we inevitably take detours. What goals did I actually follow through on this year? This helps to highlight where you've succeeded, and gathering up that evidence of success helps motivate you forward to reach bigger and bigger heights. All right, I had to sneak one more tough one in there. What am I pretending to be fine that really isn't? This is a critical question to ask because many of us walk around smiling, making sure that everything is okay, and things continue to move forward, and externally we seem to be doing really well. And part of it is because we're good pretenders. Pretending like everything is okay and continuing to move forward even when things aren't okay is part of what makes successful, high-performing people successful and high-performing. So taking a moment to ask yourself, where am I pretending that things are okay when they're really not, helps you to better understand what's important to you, and it also highlights that disconnect that we've been talking about between your internal desires and where you want to go and your actual behaviors. All right, let's bring it back. What long-term goal have I been postponing? This question helps you face the sad reality that the one thing that I am certain everyone listening to this video will do is die. Life is a finite experience. Sometimes we wait too long before we start doing what we really want to do. I just want you to take a moment to ask yourself, what have I been postponing? And what am I waiting for? All right, we're bringing it home for 2026. What milestone could I hit in the first 90 days of 2026 if I felt like I was unstoppable? This question lets you dream big, and it could be the starting point for setting up your goals for all of 2026. If you're interested in checking out the other videos of the Q4 comeback, I'll leave them linked right over here. And this quarter, I'm hosting a live cohort-based course. If you're interested in that, check out the links down below. And if you're still here, you're my kind of people. Consider subscribing to this channel.